What's up? Welcome back to Nowstalgia. Dave here with a review of A House of Dynamite, the new political thriller film from Kathryn Bigelow, out now on Netflix. This film, Kathryn Bigelow's first since Detroit came out way back in 2017. It's been a long time coming, and of course, while Detroit did not perform at the box office the way we hoped, Bigelow, before that, was coming off an incredible hot streak, just to absolutely unimpeachable thriller films between The Hurt Locker, which of course won Best Picture, and then Zero Dark 30. Needless to say, Bigelow returning to another political thriller film with A House of Dynamite is pretty exciting. This film premiered back in Venice earlier this year and is out now on Netflix, which is disappointing because this film is absolutely gorgeous, and the way Bigelow can hold tension, the way she can construct a thriller film, this is clearly the type of film that would perform even better in the theater experience. Nonetheless, just happy we got it, happy she got another movie made. Again, the long wait here is quite disappointing. Overall, I liked Kathryn Bigelow's A House of Dynamite quite a bit, but I do think its polarizing ending prevents it from being great. Showing how the U.S. government reacts when a missile strike is headed for the continental U.S. is a great premise for a thriller film, and the tension is built up immediately in A House of Dynamite, as we come to expect from most Bigelow films. You have a deep ensemble cast across the government and military here. Famous faces, Idris Elba, Rebecca Ferguson, Jared Harris, the list goes on, showing us various different locations, including the Situation Room. The film does a great job at building its anticipation, giving you a sense of severity and seriousness. Perhaps most successful of all, shows you how little time there really would be to make all the various decisions and calls you'd have to make in a situation like this. On top of that, the production design, the blocking, the way the camera moves, the form is there. The problem, though, is with what the ending does and doesn't do and how the audience feels when they experience that. Structure-wise, it becomes pretty clear how House of Dynamite is going to tell its story, because its three-act structure effectively just keeps rewinding time and giving you the same events from a different perspective, or a twist on a perspective you saw in the background. Supporting characters in Scenario 1 become the lead characters of Scenario 2. Some characters you only see in one of the scenarios, etc. It speaks to the scope of government and how people have roles and lanes to play and be in. That being said, after you do it 2 times and then you realize you're doing it a third time, in terms of going back in time, going back to when the launch of this missile from somewhere over in the Pacific area towards the U.S., once that realization happens and you go through it again, that rigmarole, I think the audience is ready to learn more. And that being said, it does start off, I think, quite strongly. You have Anthony Ramos as a soldier at a Alaskan military base, which ultimately is the location of where the intercept missiles, I forget the acronym, the intercept missiles that are launched to try and take down the missile going towards the U.S. You have that location. You have Rebecca Ferguson, who is a leader in the White House Situation Room. We eventually meet other people in the military. Jared Harris is the Secretary of Defense. Tracy Letts is one of the high-ranking generals or admirals in the military. Gabriel Basso is the Deputy National Security Advisor. You have Greta Lee in the film. Jason Clarke is a Navy admiral, of course, reuniting with Bigelow following Zero Dark 30, much smaller role this time around. Idris Elba, the President of the United States. Of all those performers across the various scenarios, I think the ones that make the biggest impression are Ferguson in the Situation Room, in terms of just, communicating that tension, that personal tension. I think what the movie does so well is showing you how hard it is to stay professional and stay serious when you realize there's a 15-minute countdown until a seemingly nuclear missile destroys Chicago, especially when maybe you're Jared Harris, the Secretary of Defense, and you happen to have a daughter played by Caitlin Dever who lives in Chicago. Unsurprisingly, that guy gets pretty distracted once they spend more time with him. I like Tracy Letts. I think he's very convincing, very commanding as a general. And I think Scenario 3, despite the fact that, I was pretty ready for more plot progression, when we finally see Idris Elba in person after him just being on the Zoom calls in black beforehand and hearing his voice, you see him in person and, he's at some kind of pop-up event with children in basketball. Angel Reese cameo in that scene, very reminiscent of George W. Bush when he learns about 9/11, but his decision-making right? When he's presented with the nuclear football and has, several minutes to decide what is the response to be. He's being recommended to take a preemptive strike against America's various foes and antagonists abroad, even though they do not know the origin of this missile. And it has not yet struck Chicago after all, but the intercept missiles have all failed, and it seemingly will. I think the concept of looking at the binder of the strike options and it being presented to him as rare, medium, and well done in terms of total destruction against your enemies, it's pretty sobering. And I think that the film does a consistent job at that, of the gravity of the situation, the seriousness of these decisions that only a few people are making, and also the almost mundane nature of how some of it works, like the technology, right? It's a lot of Zoom calls. Maybe that's not the most cinematic thing in the movie, but there's a lot of people on Zoom from all over the country and the world, right? Talking it out. You have other people trying to call in, like over in Russia, who are denying any responsibility. They can't be patched into the same phone call because they're on, different frequencies, different technological limitations in line, right? I love the scene between Gabriel Basso's, security advisor character and the Russian, premier or whoever he's talking to. I think that scene is really convincing. In general, the way they talk through about what they know and don't know works really well. I do think, though, if there's one thing that's perhaps the most unrealistic thing about how the story is communicated in the film, it would be that the U.S. almost certainly would not do a preemptive strike in that manner. You have to confer. They don't have any confirmation that the missile is in fact there. It could be a cyber attack. It could be fake on all their instruments and readings. You don't know that. And also, the concept of the second strike capability would allow you to take the first hit, and you wouldn't have to preemptively strike everyone else before you lose that ability. Like, the movie kind of presents it as some way you would lose your ability to strike back. That probably isn't actually the case. However, the movie gets to its ending, and the ending is that the movie doesn't really end. We've seen the three scenarios, and we actually have not progressed any further in the plot. We've just seen it in a few different ways. We conclude with a lot of the specific personnel being taken to Black Rock, Raven Rock, the deep bunker in the DMV area, Virginia area, and there's no realization. We don't know if the missile strike shot. We don't know anything happens. We don't know what Idris Elba's president decides to do in response. We don't know anything. We're supposed to think about it. That's how the movie ends. It's a quick fade to black type thing. And obviously the point of the film is to think about the kind of rise and re-rise of nuclear proliferation, increasing remixing and rebuilding of nuclear armaments and reserves across the globe, the US, Russia, China, elsewhere. North Korea, of course, comes up in the film. The timing of the film, the last, non-proliferation arms treaty between Russia and the US expires next year. I don't think most people here expect that to be immediately renewed. So we're coming into a time where nuclear weapons seem more pronounced, more a part of the world today than they may have a few years ago, right after the Cold War had really sapped most people's appetites for, building up those armories. That's the point of the film, to think about that and think about that severity and that gravity. And the movie does such a good job of communicating just how little time there is to react to something like this if it does happen. However, gosh, is that an unsatisfying ending? I was rocking with the movie. I was really with it. And I think it does a great job at what it's doing, but it just doesn't really end its story. And that's, again, it's besides the point. It's besides the point. The movie is still an effective thriller, but you almost want a sense of payoff. The movie does such a good job of getting you invested in this plot when you're not supposed to be invested in this plot. You're supposed to think about the bigger picture when you're watching the movie. So that's a polarizing thing. I think the fact this movie's on Netflix, can be in front of people. People aren't sitting with it in a theater the same way. That it's almost like spreading the ability to react negatively to that ending. And I understand that, even though I think there's just a lot to it. I wouldn't call the movie like underbaked or undercooked. I think it's quite competent at everything it does do. It's just that it doesn't quite finish the job, doesn't quite land that plane. The missile doesn't strike on the audience, right? So, yeah, it's tough. I think overall, again, performances, Ferguson good, Basso really good. The smaller roles, some of them are quite small, right? You have like one conversation, like one phone call for like Greta Lee or Caitlin Deaver, right? It's quite the range of ensemble, but I think it's done well in all those aspects except the ending. So if you've seen the movie, let me know what you thought of it. How did you react to the ending? I think that's kind of the first place anyone can go to when talking about the film with someone else is how they felt about its conclusion. Let me know either way. In terms of Oscars, Bigelow, of course, won Best Picture with The Hurt Locker, as we know. I don't think this is going to be an Oscar contender in the end, given the Netflix depth they have. But don't rule it out. Netflix will campaign the film. There's not an obvious acting nomination choice, given it's an ensemble film. Not everyone's in the movie to a big degree. It's all supporting parts. So it's really a Best Picture, Best Production Design, Best Director, Best Screenplay, play. I think the screenplay will come under some scrutiny, again, given the ending. So I think I'm less convinced of its Oscar chances than I was before I saw the film. But don't completely rule it out. I definitely would put this ahead of, the Springsteen film, for example, in terms of Oscar contenders that have taken a hit recently. But let me know what you thought of the movie. And for more movie reviews, subscribe. And I'll see you next time.